I am the most infatuated and well-behaved girl besides Stephen Parker, the Prince of Beijing Circle. No matter how much he hurt me, I never thought about leaving. Until the last time he spent a fortune on his Cinderella. But he was too stingy to lend me 50,000 yuan for life-saving money. I was so disappointed that I threw the ring away and walked away. My friends advised him to coax me back. Stephen smiled nonchalantly. Why rush? She will come back in less than a day. On the third day, he finally couldn't stand it anymore and called me. Come home when you've had enough of the fun. But the voice that came on the phone was a male voice that he was very familiar with. Keep your voice down. Samantha was exhausted last night and is still sleeping. Don't wake her up. 1. I stood behind the noisy crowd, staring blankly at the scene in front of him. Stephen hugged a thin and timid girl. A sophomore girl named Sarah Harris who came from an even more humble background than I did. She is also the girl he has been doting on recently. The huge box was crowded with managers and public relations from major luxury brands. Ready-to-wear clothes, shoes, bags, and jewelry ranging from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions. They were presented one by models of different skin colors. As long as Sarah takes a second look at it, Stephen will immediately spend a fortune to buy it. But just half an hour ago, no matter how much I begged, Stephen refused to lend me $50,000. He knew that I was penniless and had even borrowed money from loan sharks. But there was no mercy at all. I suddenly woke up. In fact, I already knew that I was a complete joke. Although everyone says that I am Stephen's longest-term girlfriend, he treats me very differently from other women. 2. Mr. Parker, that's enough. You've bought too much. Sarah's eyes were shining, pure and happy. Stephen leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. As long as you like it and you are happy. Mr. Parker, you are so kind. Sarah looked at him with admiration and fascination. Such a look undoubtedly greatly pleased the prince. He laughed happily, put his arm around Sarah and stood up. Come on, let's go somewhere else and continue playing. Stephen. Seeing that he and Sarah were about to go out, I finally couldn't help but call him. Stephen held Sarah in his arms, and Sarah looked at me curiously. Mr. Parker, who is she? I held my breath. In my empty heart, there is only the last bit of hope left. Stephen dusted off his cigarette ash and looked down at me condescendingly. He pinched Sarah's soft face again. My dear, she is just a piece of trash that you can't get rid of. She is smelly, stubborn, and annoying. Don't pay any attention to her. Sarah opened her eyes slightly and pursed her lips again. When he looked at me again, there was a hint of disdainful sympathy in his eyes. I looked away and looked at Stephen. I knew him when I was 12. I fell in love with him at the age of 17. I am 22 years old now, a full 10 years. I thought I would love him forever. But now it was cut off so easily. 3. I lowered my eyes and stared at the ring that didn't fit well on my finger. After a moment, I took the ring off. Stephen frowned slightly. Samantha Moore. The moment he said my name, the ring drew a parabola, landed in the trash can. I let out a breath, looked up at him and smiled. Stephen, I won't bother you anymore. As you wish, let's break up. There was dead silence in the box. The moment I opened the door, there was a dull thud from behind, as if something heavy was being kicked over. Samantha, you know my temper, you'd better think it over. Stephen's voice sounded filled with anger. In the past, I would have been so scared that I would have kept quiet and surrendered. But now I didn't even turn my head. Well, I've thought it through. Having said that, I opened the door and walked straight out of the box. 4. The summer night rainstorm comes suddenly. Lightning tore through the dark night and thunder rumbled. Someone whispered a reminder. Stephen, do you want to go out and take a look? I think it's going to rain heavily outside. Stephen's eyes gradually showed a hint of anger. He hugged Sarah. Don't worry about her. Stephen. Stephen took the wine glass and smiled nonchalantly. Why are you so anxious? Just wait and see. In less than a day, she will come back obediently. As soon as he finished speaking, heavy rain began to fall outside the window. It's raining heavily, and it seems Samantha didn't bring an umbrella. Someone murmured, and Stephen looked out the window. His brows were deeply furrowed and his thin lips were pursed into a line. Mr. Parker. You hurt me. Sarah's voice sounded timidly. Stephen let go of her hand and pinched Sarah's face again. Be good, let's continue drinking. But the next moment he suddenly raised his foot and kicked over the coffee table in front of him. Sarah shrank aside in fear. Mr. Parker! Get out, all of you! Sarah was so aggrieved that she kept crying, but she was still dragged out. Stephen stood up and walked to the window. The rain was heavy like a waterfall, the sky and the earth were the same color, and nothing could be seen clearly. 5. As soon as I walked out of the hotel, I was soaked like a drowned rat. My whole body was wet, so I just stopped hiding and running. As I was walking like this, I suddenly stopped. He just slowly squatted down and hugged himself. In the pouring rain, I cried silently. I don't know how long I cried until the rain above my head stopped inexplicably. Only then did I realize what was happening and looked up. Darker than the inky black of the rainy night were the man's eyes at that moment. Joshua Evans stood beside me, holding an umbrella. The moment I looked over, he bent down slightly. Slender fingers grasped my arm and pulled me up. Evans! I was a little surprised. The dress was thin and wet and stuck to my body. His eyes fell on it unscrupulously. I shivered a little and wanted to pull my hand back to cover it. The phone in my bag started buzzing again. I knew it was the hospital calling to urge me to pay the bill. Without knowing when, the wet fingers had tightly grasped Joshua's sleeves. Evans, can you lend me $50,000? I looked up at him, with shame, anger, and despair of taking a gamble. 6. Joshua held an umbrella and his eyes slowly fell on my face. But he didn't speak for a long time. The rain was hitting the umbrella. This small world under the umbrella seems to be completely isolated. The eldest son of the Evans family, he is dissolute and unruly, and behaves eccentrically and unconventionally. But he has extremely high EQ and IQ and outstanding abilities. In the circle of Beijing City, even slightly surpass Stephen. In fact, all the friends around them know that although the two of them are polite on the surface, they actually have no contact with each other in private, and it is obvious that they do not get along. And I was once Stephen's girlfriend. Joshua, I think he hates me too. The fingers curled up, wanting to withdraw. Joshua suddenly let go of his hand. When he fell again, he had already grasped my waist through my wet clothes. Before I could come to my senses, I had already fallen into his arms. Samantha, what do you want in exchange? This was the first sentence he spoke tonight. This was also the first time I heard Joshua call my name. Not Samantha, not Miss Lynn, but Samantha. 7. Joshua fished me out of the tub. Then he handed me a bowl of hot ginger soup. I was still a little dazed. He transferred to me a huge sum of 7 figures. I got in his car and went to his villa in the holiday resort. And now, I am wearing his bathrobe, sitting opposite him and drinking ginger soup. The whole process takes only about 3 hours. I held the bowl. She didn't dare to even look at the man in front of her. He was wearing a navy blue silk nightgown, revealing his muscular chest. While I was drinking my soup, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me. Those peach blossom eyes were very charming, coupled with his lazy sitting posture at this time, as if to solidify his reputation as the capital's #1 playboy. After drinking the soup, I sat there stiffly, like a well-behaved primary school student. Joshua seemed to laugh. The next moment he picked me up sideways. Why are you so light? Don't you usually eat? I don't eat much. In his arms I felt a little stiff. Stephen likes slim girls. In recent years I have hardly touched rice. I have long forgotten what it feels like to be full. Samantha, you'd look better if you were a little fatter. Joshua laid me on his big bed. His tall body leaned down and he bent his head to kiss me. When the cool kiss falls, I closed my eyes and my ears almost turned red. Joshua had a playful smile in his eyes and played with my earlobe. Hasn't Stephen kissed you before? You get shy so easily. Stephen rarely kisses me. The few times it happened, it was only on the forehead or cheeks. He doesn't like me and certainly doesn't want to touch me. I closed my eyes and my ears and neck were burning red. As Joshua untied the belt of my bathrobe, I gently grasped his fingers with trembling hands. What's wrong? He immediately stopped what he was doing and held my trembling fingers. Joshua, can you be gentler later? I'm scared. His fingers were shaking violently, and the blush on his face faded, turning pale. I bit my lip, opened my eyes to look at him, then turned away nervously. Joshua rubbed my back gently. Don't worry. He chuckled happily in my ear. But the force with which he kissed me was obviously stronger. I didn't say anything more. Just close your eyes and grit your teeth to bear it. Until the end. I couldn't bear it any longer, so I opened my mouth and bit his shoulder, tears streaming down my face. He seemed to have noticed something and suddenly stopped. Samantha, is this your first time? I didn't speak. Just nodded lightly. Joshua's movements slowed down unconsciously. Those peach blossom eyes that were originally filled with lust were now extremely gentle. He held my face, wiped the tears from my eyelashes, and apologized to me very sincerely. Sorry, Samantha. He held me to his chest and caressed me with gentle kisses. Does it hurt? I nodded again. It really hurts, 1,000 times more than I had imagined. It's my fault. Joshua held my face and let out a sigh of pity between the kisses. I didn't say anything else, just put my face into Joshua's chest. Tears kept pouring out. When he was 20 years old, Stephen got drunk. A friend called me and asked me to pick him up. When I arrived, he was sitting on the sofa with his clothes disheveled. Holding the phone in one hand, he kept opening and locking the screen. The air was filled with a strong smell of alcohol and cigarettes. His eyes and eyebrows were red, probably because he was very drunk and his mind was in a state of confusion. Samantha, come here. He was unusually gentle, and it seemed to be the first time he called me by a reduplicated word. I walked over to him and he held my hand. He took out a ring from his pocket. Be my girlfriend. He said this without waiting for my answer, and forcefully put the ring on my finger. That ring is a little big, not my size. The style is also very ordinary and simple. But I am still very happy. On the way back, I kept reading it over and over again. Maybe I was smiling too happily. Stephen's mood inexplicably improved. He hugged me and kissed me for the first time. That was the 8th year we had known each other. It was the most wonderful spring night of my life. The moment Stephen put the ring on my finger, I swore to myself, Samantha, he is the one for me in this life. 9. Samantha. Maybe I shed too many tears. Joshua felt helpless and at a loss. Please stop crying. He wiped my tears, but I couldn't stop crying. No more. His voice was a little hoarse, and he pressed his forehead against mine, rubbing it gently. In my impression, Joshua is not such a gentle man. There are countless socialites and rich ladies who like him in the circle. He seems to have affection for everyone. But in fact, I have seen him treating those ladies privately. Cold, dull, and merciless, yet impossible to blame. It's as if he is not at all wrong. And it's you, the flower, who shouldn't want to have the alluring spring breeze all to yourself. He was originally the wind that blew unintentionally. It just blew over every flower in the garden. There were also girls who cried even more miserably than I did. Joshua didn't even glance at it. When he turned around and left, all he left behind was a sentence. Miss, you look so undignified after crying that your makeup is ruined. But now he is coaxing me. I raised my face from his arms in surprise. Is it unseemly for me to cry? Joshua raised his eyebrows when he heard that, then lowered his head and sucked away the tears from the corners of my eyes. Samantha is so beautiful, I just feel bad for her. He speaks sweet words effortlessly, but with a kind of bewitching tenderness. Why? I murmured. Joshua held my face and laughed softly but didn't answer. Be good, I'll carry you to take a bath. He actually pulled himself out. Warm water will make you feel better. He bent down and tried to pick me up, but I closed my eyes and grabbed his arm. Pull him back into my arms. Joshua, I won't break my promise. After tonight, we'll be even. 10. Joshua suddenly stopped. No response either. I was a little surprised and opened my eyes to look at him. The pair of eyes that were originally filled with tenderness gradually turned cold. It's like returning to my previous bohemian days. We're even. He looked at me and repeated what I had just said. I looked away uncomfortably. I'll transfer the extra money back to you. I only want 50,000 yuan. Joshua seemed to be pissed off by me. I thought about it and stammered. If you are unhappy, I will pay you back when I have enough money. Samantha. Joshua grabbed my jaw and blocked my mouth. If you keep talking, I'll probably be the first man in Beijing to be angered to death by a woman. I smelled a faint bitter scent on Joshua, but the aftertaste makes people fascinated and indulged. I could sense that he was a little angry, but he was gentle throughout. Later I couldn't help but think vaguely. He didn't seem to be the man I thought he was. No wonder more women like him than Steven. 11. I stayed at Joshua's villa for 3 full days. I received several messages from mutual friends in my circle. Samantha, where have you been these days? Steven is very angry. You'd better come back quickly. You blocked all of Steven's WeChat and phone numbers? Samantha, have you thought about the consequences of doing this? What will you do if Steven gets really angry? I didn't reply and threw the phone aside. After deciding to break up, I will no longer consider these issues. In fact, the relationship between Steven and I has been in jeopardy for a long time. I just have to hold on by myself. Last night, as soon as I came out of the bathroom, Joshua came into the room with a bottle of red wine. Have a drink with me, Samantha. He sat down on the sofa. For some reason, I always felt that there was a bit of desolation and loneliness in his eyes at this moment. I don't have a good alcohol tolerance and I got tipsy very quickly. Joshua picked me up and I was afraid of falling, so I quickly hugged his neck. It seems a little heavier. Indeed, I have been eating too much these days and it seems like there is a layer of fat in my belly. It's very comfortable to hold. Joshua laid me on the bed. The light in the bedroom dimmed and it started raining outside again. 3 days of running in. The initial awkwardness and discomfort is no longer there. The drizzling rain finally stopped in the middle of the night. I lay on the pillow with my long hair hanging down in a winding manner. Joshua leaned against the head of the bed and lowered his head to feed me some water. His fingers tangled in the ends of my hair. He seemed a little absent-minded. I don't have the energy to speak either. In the end, I fell asleep on his chest. My phone kept vibrating, but I was sleeping soundly and unaware of anything. Joshua freed one hand and grabbed my phone. The number wasn't Steven's, but there probably wasn't anyone else with it except him. Joshua stared at the string of numbers when the phone rang again. He swiped to answer. Samantha, enough of the wildness, it's time to go home. Steven's voice was filled with impatience. Even bowing one's head in submission is an attitude of condescending charity. Joshua's lips curled up into a sarcastic smile. Keep your voice down. Joshua patted me on the back. I opened my eyes sleepily and fell into deep sleep again. Samantha is exhausted and still asleep. Mr. Parker, please keep your voice down so as not to wake her up. 12. Joshua finished. There was deathly silence on the other end of the phone. Joshua waited patiently for the other party to speak. About half a minute passed. Joshua, why is Samantha at your place? You'll have to ask Mr. Parker himself. Joshua lowered his eyes and looked at me sleeping in his arms. Did you touch her? Joshua, did you fucking touch her? Steven finally broke down. His voice hoarse and trembling. Samantha got caught in the rain and isn't feeling well. Mr. Parker, don't think of me, Joshua, as such a beast. After he finished speaking, he hung up the call and turned off his phone. Those eyes that always seemed too cold-hearted. At this time he looked at me quietly for a long time. He then laughed at himself. Just now he could have slapped Steven hard in the face. But looking at the gentle and calm face in my arms. But for some unknown reason he changed his mind. I know nothing about this. The next day I packed my things and Joshua took me back to Beijing. When I got off the car I thanked him quietly. He leaned on the seat, his shirt collar disheveled, his peach blossom eyes holding a seductive smile. Samantha, you're always welcome to come back to me. I lowered my eyes and my cheeks still felt a little hot when I thought about the chaos and indulgence of the past 3 days. Goodbye, Evans. The smile in Joshua's eyes faded. The car window slowly rose and the car started. I stood on the side of the road and watched his car drive away. I knew very clearly in my heart that there would be no connection between Joshua and I anymore. I went to the hospital to visit Sister Chloe. Fortunately, she recovered again and is now safe for the time being. I was relieved to see that she was in good spirits. I was only 12 years old at that time. After my mother died of illness, my father and grandparents forced me to drop out of school. They looked down on me because I was a girl and thought it was a waste of money to go to school. He planned to let me go out with my uncle and aunt to work and earn money. Then after a few years she would find a family that gave a lot of dowry and marry into it. It was Sister Chloe and her mother who secretly gave me some money, and asked a relative to send me to the county junior high school overnight. The old principal and teachers of my junior high school protected me. He argued with reason and drove my father and grandfather away, so that I can continue studying. The next year, Stephen followed his mother to that small town to do charity work. I was the best student, so Stephen's mother started to support me. That year was also the first time I met Stephen. He is handsome, as beautiful as pearls and jade. A little arrogant but not annoying. When Stephen's mother brought him back to Beijing, he said something to me. "Little girl, see you in Beijing." His words planted a seed in my heart. From then on, I worked so hard that I forgot to eat and sleep, and I dared not slack off for a moment. At the age of 17, I was admitted to one of the best universities in Beijing. At the age of 20, Stephen said, "Samantha, be my girlfriend." When I was 21, Chloe's mother fell seriously ill. When I found out, I cried and begged her to come to Beijing for treatment. I took out all my scholarship and all the money I saved from working part-time. But my aunt was too ill and passed away soon. Even more unfortunate was the fact that it happened shortly after the funeral. Sister Chloe also fell ill, with the same illness as Auntie. I couldn't come up with any more money, so I gritted my teeth and borrowed from a loan shark. I saved Sister Chloe from the brink of death once. But there was a second time and a third time, each one more dangerous than the last. I can only ask Stephen for help. But not only did he not lend me a penny, he also humiliated me. I almost collapsed. "You are not obligated to lend me money, but we have known each other for so many years. You should at least ask me why I am so short of money, and at least you shouldn't humiliate me like this." But all I got was a mockery from him. "Can't stand the humiliation? Then go away, no one will stop you." I still have a wish. In my hometown, that closed and poor village deep in the mountains, there are many girls like me and Chloe. They have no chance to go to school, and some even have to work to earn money to support their families at a young age. When they were a little older, they were married off casually in exchange for a dowry to continue to subsidize their brothers. Every drop of blood was squeezed out. I want to save Sister Chloe and save more girls out there. But now I am so powerless that even I am in trouble. When I left the hospital, I made up my mind to give up the postgraduate entrance examination and find a job with a good salary. On the way back, my cell phone suddenly rang a few times. I opened my phone and saw that it was a mutual friend in the circle. He sent me 10 transfer messages. I looked at the countless zeros and knew they were given to me by Stephen. But there was not even the slightest fluctuation in my heart. If that night, I asked Stephen to lend me $50,000. He did not refuse and immediately spent a lot of money on Sarah. Maybe I still won't have the heart to break up with him. The cotton padded jacket in summer and the palm leaf fan in winter are all useless if they are too late. I didn't click it. A few minutes later, my friend called. I thought about it and pressed the answer button. "Samantha." Stephen's voice was a little hoarse. "Just 3 days." He seemed to have changed from a boyfriend to a person from another world. "What's up? Where are you now? Get ready to go home." On the other end of the phone, Stephen seemed to be instantly relieved. "Then I'll wait for you at home." He hung up the phone after he finished speaking. This so-called home is probably the only generosity Stephen has shown me. After my senior year, I moved into this apartment and began to prepare for the postgraduate entrance examination. The house belongs to Stephen, but there are things in it that are mine. Since we broke up, I should naturally clean out my things. 14. When I opened the door, I was stunned for a moment. The air in the room is very bad. The room was filled with the pungent smell of cigarettes and alcohol. Stephen sat on the couch, his shirt very wrinkled. His hair was also messy, showing no signs of having been taken care of. I changed into slippers and went in. "Samantha." Stephen stood up and walked over to me. He stretched out his arms to hug me, but I dodged it. "Stephen, we've broken up. I came back today just to get my stuff." I looked at him calmly. He probably didn't get much rest these days. There was a dark color under his eyes and his face looked haggard. The shirt he was wearing was actually from 3 days ago. This really surprised me. Stephen is a person with severe misophobia. "Samantha, you're still angry." I shook my head. "I'm just playing around with them, you know that." Stephen reached out his hand and tried to pull me. I avoided it again. Steven, I don't care how you play with others, but this time, I'm not kidding you. I looked at him, the person I secretly admired when I was young. I have dreamed of someone to accompany me for the rest of my life. That's it, we're strangers. In fact, how could I not feel sad? But after so many years, I already knew this would be the outcome. But deep down, I felt very calm and relieved. So, you don't have to explain anything to me, I said, and walked around him towards the room. Samantha. I stopped but didn't look back. You knew that Joshua and I were at odds, and you were angry with me, so you did this on purpose to piss me off and get back at me, right? Steven came over and put his hands around my shoulders. Samantha, no one knows how much you love me better than I do. He is so sure. Even when he condescended to save the relationship, he was strong and overbearing. But I became more sober. What could be better than someone you once loved knowing how much you loved him? But they don't care or respect you at all, and hurt and humiliate you at will, which is even more ridiculous. I pushed his hand away. It has nothing to do with Joshua. Steven, I'm the one breaking up with you. I turned around and said seriously, it's me. I don't like you anymore. 15. After I packed up and left that day, Steven never contacted me again. He is the pampered prince in the Beijing circle, and I am just an orphan who has received the kindness of his mother. I started sending out resumes everywhere, looking for a job. Based on my academic qualifications, I quickly received an interview notice. On the day of the interview, I saw Joshua on the LED screen downstairs. He was wearing a black business suit and was surrounded by several executives and secretaries. This man doesn't smile, and when he's serious, he looks very solemn. I felt as if I was in another world. It was like that rainy night, the man who shared my bed with me for 3 days in the villa in the mountains. It's just something that appeared in my dream. But I quickly came to my senses. On the day we returned to Beijing, we both tacitly put an end to the past with Joshua. I'm doing this for life-saving money. And he probably just thought it was because I was the woman who was his mortal enemy. He is curious and feels it is exciting. 16. I rented a new house which was very close to the company, but it was very small and old. I took some time off over the weekend to visit Sister Chloe in the hospital. She recovered well this time. When I went to see her, she told me with red eyes that her younger sister was going to get married. A girl who was just 18 years old was going to marry a butcher from the next village. I held Sister Chloe's hand and said, "Let her run away. Come here and find a job to support yourself." Sister Chloe just shook her head with tears in her eyes. We all know how difficult it is. The endless mountains are the shackles that lock the throats of their destiny. How lucky I am to be able to escape like I did. When I left the hospital, I received a call from the company's HR. She regretfully informed me that the company ultimately did not hire me. I asked the reason, and after asking, I suddenly understood. It must be Steven. After the call ended, a message came in. Samantha, I will make you come back to me. I stood on the side of the road. It was clearly the height of summer, but my whole body was cold and my fingers were shaking. I looked at the shadows and light spots above my head in a daze. It turns out that this is the man I have loved for 5 years. When I was admitted to a university in Beijing, I was laughed at for my poverty and ignorance. Steven, the one who protected me with a cold face and stood up for me. Steven, who stayed by my bedside all night when I was sick and clumsily made soup for me. Steven, who scolded me, humiliated me, but then hugged me and begged for my forgiveness after getting drunk. Countless pictures, countless him, overlapping, yet becoming blurred and unrecognizable. Turns out that everyone was young. Everyone will fall in love with the perfect opposite sex that they imagine. Steven, whom I have loved over the years. It was just that I beautified the Steven that I believed in over and over again in my mind. 17. I deleted all the contact information of mutual friends in Steven's circle. I have been repeatedly frustrated in finding a job. I simply followed my next-door neighbor and set up a stall under the overpass. There must always be income to make a living. As for Sister Chloe, my heart is always hanging in my throat, because she hasn't fully recovered yet. What makes me even more anxious is the high-interest loan I borrowed before. I am increasingly strapped for cash and have trouble paying the high interest rates. Fortunately, I can earn money every day from setting up the stall. I was almost being hard on myself by living frugally, And after a week, I still had nearly 1,000 yuan saved. But the good times didn't last long. The second week, as soon as my neighbor and I set up our stall, the urban management officers came. Other vendors were experienced and ran away in time. My car and goods were all taken away. Samantha, are you okay? Perhaps the neighbor was a little scared because he saw me standing there motionless with a pale face. I'm fine, you guys go back first, I want to be alone for a while. I sat on the bench by the river for a long time. Until the phone rang. Another unfamiliar number. I knew it was Stephen calling. Just pressed answer. Samantha, I'm in the hospital now. I stood up instantly. Stephen. Your sister's name is Chloe Evans, right? What do you want to do? Stephen. Come to me if you have anything to say. I've asked the doctor, her illness could relapse at any time, it's very dangerous. Stephen's voice was filled with a high-handed determination. Samantha, as long as you come back, I will immediately ask the best doctor in Beijing to treat her. What if I don't go back? Samantha, you know exactly what kind of person I am. From childhood to adulthood, I would do whatever it takes to get what I want. But I am a human being, a living person with flesh and blood, my own thoughts and self-esteem. Samantha, I was wrong in the past, I will change. I know that for Stephen this sentence is a sign of surrender. But I am no longer the Samantha who could be coaxed back by him with just a few words. It's too late, Stephen. It's not too late. I know nothing happened between you and Joshua. Samantha, we're reconciled. Everything that happened before is over. I won't mention it again. Joshua told you that? I was a little surprised. I originally thought that he and Stephen were sworn enemies. He would not miss such a good opportunity to humiliate Stephen. That's right. He lied to you, Stephen. That night, I sold myself to him for $50,000. I spoke in a very soft voice, and even at the end there was a chuckle in my voice. So you see, we are completely hopeless. There was dead silence on the other end of the line. I looked at the sparkling river in the distance. Tear open the seemingly healed wound with force. Samantha, you are lying to me. The person you love is me. You would never do such a thing. Stephen, nothing in this world is absolutely impossible. I admit that I really loved you in those years. But later, when I left with Joshua, I knew that I had completely let you go. Samantha. Stephen, let's part ways in peace. Also, don't threaten me with the people I care about. Don't make me hate you forever. After saying that, I hung up the phone. Stephen called again soon and I blocked that number. 18. Late that night, a friend called me. Samantha, please come and see Stephen. He drank a lot of alcohol and had stomach bleeding. He is now in the hospital. Stephen keeps calling your name, Samantha. What's going on? Can you guys sit down and talk it out? Stephen doesn't have any random girls around him these days. He's cut them off completely. And Stephen also found the ring you threw away. Samantha, Stephen refused to have the 4 drip and insisted on being discharged from the hospital. We really have no other options. I interrupted him. Call your uncle and aunt to tell them, after all, it's not a small matter. Samantha. Are you sure you don't want him anymore? Well, no. I'm about to hang up. My friend called me again. Samantha, we never thought it would be like this. Stephen really repented this time. Well, then his future girlfriend or wife should live a happy life. I didn't say anything else and hung up the phone. I thought that it was time to change this number that I had used for many years. 19. After changing my number, I received a call from Joshua. I have been back in Beijing for nearly a month. When I heard his voice again, I was in a trance for a moment. Samantha, Joshua hissed. Shouldn't you come to the hospital to see me? Are you sick? I'm injured. Injured? Did you fight with someone? To be exact, someone else picked a fight with me. Is it Stephen? I understood it but also felt guilty. Joshua helped me cover up for those 3 days. But I laid my cards on Stephen. How could a proud and arrogant prince like him swallow this humiliation? I went to the hospital. At the gate, I gritted my teeth and bought a bouquet of flowers and a fruit basket, the cheapest ones. Joshua was indeed injured, with a cut and bruise on the corner of his eye. But even if I was wearing a striped hospital gown and was injured, this person still looks a little uninhibited. Seeing me come in, he raised his eyebrows slightly. and the nurses and assistants in the ward all retreated. I felt a little embarrassed, but I handed him the things I bought. Evans, these things are cheap, but they are also a little gift from me, please don't despise it. Joshua looked at the flowers in crude and simple packaging, and the slightly wilted fruits in the fruit basket. She didn't seem to be disgusted at all. Peel an apple for me. After washing the fruit, I sat beside his bed and started peeling apples. But before he finished peeling the apple, the door of the ward was suddenly kicked open from outside. I was startled and my fingers trembled, and the knife cut my fingertips. Joshua suddenly stood up, grabbed my bleeding hand, lowered his head and sucked the wound. I subconsciously tried to pull my hand back, but Joshua held it tighter. Stephen stood there, his clothes disheveled, his face bruised and one arm in a sling. His eyes were red and he looked extremely embarrassed. It also collapsed to the extreme. Samantha. He called my name in a hoarse voice. With one hand he took out a jewelry box from his pocket with some difficulty. This is the pink heart-shaped diamond you've always liked, Samantha. I flew abroad and bought it myself. Come here and put on the ring. We'll go get the certificate tomorrow. I finally turned around and looked at him. Stephen's haggard and dim eyes suddenly brightened. Samantha, come over here, please. He held out his hand to me. Stephen. I liked pink diamonds when I was 20 years old, but now I don't like diamonds anymore. Samantha, I'm sorry, I really don't know. You never told me. He felt a little helpless and regretful, and withdrew his hand awkwardly. What's the use of saying that? He never cared about my joys, sorrows, anger, and happiness. Go ahead, Stephen. Stop pestering me. Who would have thought that one day, Samantha would say these words to Stephen? His face gradually darkened. Is it because of Joshua? What did he give you? Money or jewelry? Do you think he likes you and is sincere to you? Stephen's expression gradually became crazy. If you were not my girlfriend, would he even look at you? A man like him can find any woman he wants, so why would he be nice to a woman that others are tired of? I stood up and slapped him in the face with all my strength. Stephen, please don't make me regret it. I hate it so much that I once really liked you. What did I say wrong? Stephen raised his hand and touched his face, but his eyes passed me and looked at Joshua. She secretly had a crush on me when she was 17, and followed me when she was 18. It's been 5 years now. No matter how many women I've had, she's never left me. So Joshua, do you think she likes you? She's just using you to piss me off. Believe it or not, Samantha will come back to me sooner or later. And you will be kicked away by her. He spoke more and more anxiously, as if this could convince himself to believe it. Convince Joshua to dislike me. It hits the nail on the head. I really don't want to hear these words anymore. Turned around and walked to Joshua's bed. Joshua still looked unserious. Samantha, are you going to kick me out? I didn't answer. She just bent down and kissed his dry lips. 20. I don't know when Stephen left. I don't know what Joshua's expression was when I kissed him, but Joshua clearly enjoyed it, even though my kiss is still immature. But he still felt unsatisfied. But after I did this in a rush, I felt a little overwhelmed. Sorry, Samantha, I'm disfigured. The wound on his face showed signs of inflammation, and half of his face was slightly swollen. Joshua, stop. Moreover, our beginning was not innocent. 22. Stephen's mother called me and invited me to have dinner with her. She was a noble person I met when I was young. She is also the kindest and most loving lady I have ever met in my life. When Stephen asked me to be his girlfriend, I was worried about what Stephen's mother would think. After all, I come from a very humble background. But Stephen's mother was very happy when she found out. She said to me, Samantha, I've always been worried about Stephen. He's too childish, too playful, and willful and won't listen to advice. You're a good kid, you're good-looking, and you're kind-hearted. I feel relieved to leave Stephen to you. But we eventually parted ways. But in my heart, no matter what happened with Stephen, I will always remember the kindness of Stephen's mother. When we got to the restaurant room, when I opened the door, I saw Stephen sitting next to Stephen's mother. I paused, but Stephen's mother had already stood up and came over to hold my hand affectionately. Samantha, come in quickly. I could only follow her in. Stephen's mother seemed to be in a particularly good mood. Pulled me to sit next to Stephen. Samantha, Steven said you guys are planning to get married? Such a happy event. Why did you hide it from Auntie? Steven's mother said this happily, and took off the jade bracelet on her wrist and wanted to put it on me. I quickly raised my hand to stop her. Auntie, you misunderstood. Mom, Samantha and I had a little fight, and she's still mad at me. Steven added. Steven's mother immediately glared at him. You must have done something wrong. I watched Samantha grow up. She is the most well-behaved and docile person. I made her angry. I know I was wrong, but Samantha won't forgive me. Steven's eyes were slightly red, and he looked at me pitifully. Samantha, I really know I was wrong. Can you give me another chance? Steven's mother was also busy persuading him. Samantha, I will teach Steven a lesson when I get back. Also, if he dares to bully you again, tell me and I will punish him severely. This time, just for Auntie's sake, please forgive him, okay? I gently pulled my hand out. Over the years, I can feel that my aunt really loves me and really likes me. She wanted me to be her daughter-in-law, and it wasn't just a pretense. But unfortunately, I still have to disappoint her in the end. Auntie, he and I have separated. Samantha, we're never going to get back together, Auntie. I'm really sorry. Steven's mother's eyes instantly turned red. Samantha, what happened? How did you two kids end up like this? I didn't answer. Things have changed and people have changed, and the orchid's cause and effect seems to be the normal state of life. My only mistake was that I naively thought that Steven liked me. But it was not until the moment we separated that I realized it belatedly. That inappropriate ring actually reminded me. Steven asked me to be friends. Maybe he was angry with someone. Maybe it's just fun for a while. The owner of the ring is not me at all. I was just deceiving myself at the time and didn't want to believe it. Seeing Steven's mother like this, I feel very uncomfortable. Auntie, I can't have dinner with you now. I'll treat you another time when I have the chance. I offered to take my leave. Steven's mother pushed Steven to take me there. No need, Auntie. I declined Steven's mother's offer, turned around, picked up my bag and left. When I was leaving the house, I heard Steven's mother scolding him bitterly. But all this has nothing to do with me. When we were almost at the elevator, Joshua appeared out of nowhere. The man's facial wounds had not yet fully healed, so he was wearing a hat. He was dressed casually today in a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking like a college student who had just graduated. But when he smiles, he still looks mean and evil. The moment he pulled me into the room next to the elevator, Steven just came out of the box and walked hurriedly towards the elevator. Samantha! He shouted my name loudly. Joshua was about to reach the door when he clicked and locked it. There was no light in the room. As Joshua leaned over, the brim of his hat brushed the top of my head. Samantha, if Steven can't find you today, just come with me. Okay? 23. How is your wound? I changed the subject. Joshua took off his hat and put his face close to me so I could see his injuries. It was almost disfigured. It looks like everything is all right now. I raised my hand and touched the scab on the wound. Samantha, it's itchy. Joshua suddenly whispered something in my ear. The doctor told me not to scratch because the itching was so severe that I couldn't sleep. He looked at me with a bit of grievance and said, I have never been beaten since I was a child. The wound is healing, but it will itch a lot. You have to bear with it, otherwise scratching it will leave scars. I comforted him softly. Then can you help me catch it? He had just finished speaking. There were footsteps in the corridor outside the door. Then came Steven's voice calling my name. Samantha, please stop hiding from me. Okay? I know you didn't go down, you're still here. Steven started knocking on doors one by one. The waiter was whispering to him. After all, there are guests dining in other rooms. But I know Steven's temper very well, and the waiter couldn't stop him at all. He will be outside this door soon. My body gradually tensed up. Joshua moved closer to me and said, Samantha, kiss me. I looked at the hideous scars at the corners of his eyes. In the end, I was soft-hearted. He stood on tiptoe and gently kissed the wound. Joshua put his arms around my waist and carried me to sit on the table beside him. When he bent down and kissed me, Steven was knocking hard on the door. Samantha, Samantha? My whole body froze and I tried to push Joshua away. But he kissed her harder and deeper. Samantha, he can't get in. 24. That day was a real mess. Stephen knocked on every door on this floor. But it happened to be the room where Joshua and I were. He didn't get in after all. When he was already mad and ready to break down the door, Stephen's mother had him dragged away by someone. When I was so obsessed with Joshua, Stephen's voice when he called my name was already hoarse and crazy. He probably heard some noise inside the door. Because when I was most excited, I couldn't help but scream. When I shouted, Stephen's voice outside the door clearly stopped for a moment. Then the noise of kicking the door became louder and louder. I was so nervous that my whole body was stiff and tense. Joshua also lost control in the end. Samantha. He kissed me over and over. 25. It was quiet outside for a long time. Joshua squatted on the ground and carefully smoothed out every wrinkle on my dress. I gradually calmed down, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. No matter what Joshua said to me, I didn't say a word. Finally, we were ready to leave. Joshua leaned against the door and took my wrist. Samantha. When he is serious, he is not as promiscuous as the rumors say. I almost feel that. He really likes me. Let's be together. 26. In the end, I didn't agree to him. Just like Stephen said before. Why does Joshua like me? If it wasn't because I was Stephen's girlfriend. In the heavy rain that night, would he condescend to get out of the car and hold an umbrella for me? It's not that I mean to think badly of everyone. It's just that these years of friction remind me again and again. So I can only warn myself like this. Don't make the same mistake again. The men in their circle are not suitable for me, Samantha. Joshua took me all the way back. Neither of us said a word. I got out of the car when it stopped. Samantha. Joshua called me. I wasn't just saying that for fun. Please think about it carefully, okay? I didn't respond, nor did I look back. Joshua's car lights were still on until he walked deeper into the alley. Someone said later. That night in that shabby rental area, there was no way for cars to enter the alley, and a luxury car worth tens of millions was parked there. Didn't leave all night. 27. Sister Chloe's condition gradually began to improve. When I went to see her again, she told me with red and swollen eyes from crying. My sister didn't want to get married, so she ran away, but she was caught again. My grandfather beat her so badly that her legs were almost broken. Sister Chloe held my hand and cried. Later, my uncle heard about it and rushed over overnight. I just sent my sister to the hospital in town. Samantha, my uncle said that my sister is determined to commit suicide. As I listened to what Sister Chloe said, I was thinking, if Sister Chloe and Auntie hadn't sent me away overnight, what awaits me, Samantha, is probably an equally tragic tragedy. Sister Chloe, I'll find a way. I'll get my sister out. Death means everything is over. Only when you live can you have new hope. But Samantha, do you really have a solution? You managed to escape from there with great difficulty. Give it a try. You have to give it a try. 28. I borrowed another 100,000 yuan at an even higher interest rate than the last time. Then he went back to his hometown with 100,000 yuan. I deliberately wore the best and most expensive clothes. I rented a very expensive car when I returned to the village. I found my sister's father and grandfather and gave them 30,000 yuan. Let Ashley go to Beijing with me. I promise you that if you work with me for a year, you can earn at least 200,000 yuan. Besides, she will only be 19 in a year, so it won't prevent her from getting married. $30,000 is almost Ashley's father's annual income. They were immediately attracted. I paid $30,000 in advance, and Ashley will pay me $170,000 in a year. How about that? I'm really short of staff over there right now, so I have to leave tomorrow. Can you guarantee that you can earn 200,000 yuan a year? If I can't make enough, I'll make up the difference. I put on a condescending attitude. I don't give such a good opportunity to everyone. If it weren't for Sister Chloe's face, it wouldn't have been your Ashley's turn. Okay. Then let that little girl go with you for a year. Things went a little more smoothly than I thought. The next day when I went to the town hospital to see Ashley and prepare to take her away. But something went wrong. My biological father, who was working away from home, heard about my return from somewhere. He actually chartered a car back to the village overnight. When I came out of the hospital with Ashley, he and his family blocked me. 29. Before I came back, I had already received the betrothal gift from the other party. My biological father looked at me like a hungry wolf staring at a piece of fat meat. Samantha, you are my daughter, so you have to listen to me. Come with me and get married now. I didn't want to say a single word to him. Take out your cell phone and prepare to call the police. But he was one step faster and knocked my phone down. To tell you the truth, it's no use calling the police. I want to marry my daughter off, and the police can't do anything about it. After so many years of being wild, I'm finally useful and can earn me some money. He grabbed my arm and pushed me toward the van. Don't even think about running away. I took the money and there's no way I'm going to give it back. How much money did you take? I'll give you double it. I tried to steady him, but he grinned, sneered, and slapped me in the face. Don't play tricks on me. I've eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. I refused to get in the car, so he slapped me again. My grandfather and uncle also rushed over. Ashley stood there crying and begging for help, but those people stood there numbly and no one stepped forward. It's like this here. A daughter's life is not a life. My daughter will get married eventually, so it would be a great thing if she could get a high bride price. I was pushed into the car and the door was about to close. Suddenly, a sharp brake sound was heard. Joshua's black Hummer was blocking the van. Before anyone could come to their senses, he had already kicked my father away and pulled me out of the car. Joshua. My legs were weak and I could barely stand. Don't be afraid, it's okay, I'm here, Samantha. Joshua hugged me tightly in his arms and bent down to kiss me hard. He held my face, rubbed the slap marks on my face with his fingers, and his expression gradually changed. Get in the car and wait for me. He pushed me into the car and locked it immediately. I realized something and rushed to the car window, knocking on it and calling his name. Joshua just glanced back at me. The scar at the corner of his eye is still there, and he looks mean and evil when he smiles. My tears suddenly welled up. 30. In the shabby and backward village, many people are ignorant. They don't understand what the law is and what the red line is. Some people who have seen the world, looking at Joshua's demeanor and the car he drives, know that he is either rich or noble and should not be provoked. But obviously, my unscrupulous family members would never consider these issues. They only knew that Joshua had ruined their plans and was going to cut off their source of income. This would be tantamount to asking for their lives. A group of people rushed up and beat him. At the beginning, Joshua had the upper hand, but later more and more people from the tribe came. His head was smashed and his face was covered with blood. Someone picked up a wooden stick and hit his legs. He clenched his teeth in pain, sweat broke out on his forehead, but he didn't even cry out. I banged on the car window desperately and cried out his name. Joshua was beaten so badly that he couldn't fight back. In the end, the whole person fell to the ground in a mess. But fortunately, his assistant and the city police finally arrived. Joshua was lifted into a car and immediately sent to the nearest county hospital. I stood outside the operating room, tears streaming down my face. The way Joshua looked back at me for the last time and smiled at me for the last time, it just won't go away. At this moment, I have no other thoughts. I just hope he is safe and sound and wakes up soon. 31. It was already evening when I was allowed to visit the ward. The doctor said Joshua had a good physical condition, so although the injury looked serious, it was not too severe. I just looked at him with a bandage on his head, almost soaked with blood. I still couldn't help crying. Joshua was lying there looking very weak. Samantha. He tried to reach out to me. I was afraid that he would touch the infusion needle, so I quickly walked over and held his hand. Isn't it ugly? I had tears in my eyes and I smiled, but the tears fell even harder. Are you stupid? I choked up and said. Can't you come with the police? I can't wait any longer. I'm afraid if I'm a little slower, you'll suffer even more. He looked at my face and the slap mark was still visible. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt anymore. I couldn't help scolding him again. You're the one who got hurt, Joshua, you idiot. It's over, Samantha. What's wrong? I was almost scared to death by him. Joshua lay there with no hope in life. Now I'm ugly, stupid, and I've lost my virginity. I guess I'm really going to be single for the rest of my life. What are you talking about? It makes people angry and want to laugh. You have to treat your wound now, so you shaved your hair. When your wound heals and your hair grows back, You will still be very handsome. But you just called me stupid twice. What if I have any sequelae or really become stupid? I stared at him for a long moment. She smiled at him with tears in her eyes. Then I will marry you reluctantly. 32. When Joshua took me back to Beijing, Ashley went with us. In addition to her, there were several girls who were sold by their families and were also rescued. Some of them went back to school, while others prepared to find a job and leave here forever. Joshua set up a foundation in my name. It specifically provides financial support to out-of-school girls and orphans abandoned by their parents in my hometown. I was very grateful in my heart and said thank you countless times. For myself and for the millions of girls who see hope. After returning to Beijing, Joshua was ordered by his family to take good care of his injuries. I am also very busy with the foundation's affairs. Until the loan shark came to the door because the interest was not paid on time. For the first time, Joshua got mad at me. He helped me pay off all my debts. After those people left, Joshua glared at me and said, "Samantha, come in." I followed him into the room and admitted my mistake before he could even speak. I had no other choice at the time. I had just graduated and was preparing for the postgraduate entrance exam. Sister Chloe was very ill, so I had to borrow money. The second time was because of Stephen. I couldn't find a job, so I set up a stall, and the urban management seized my goods. When I said this, I couldn't help but tears up. She sat in front of Joshua like a child, crying, admitting her mistakes and apologizing. Originally, Joshua was planning to teach me a lesson. Borrowing from a loan shark should never have happened, but I did it twice. But I cried so much that he was so soft-hearted that he couldn't say a single harsh word. He stuffed all his cards into my hand. With me here, this won't happen again. Joshua wiped my tears and felt a little regretful that he shouldn't have been so mean to me. Anyway, from now on, no matter what happens, Samantha, you have to think of me first. But I still prefer to rely on myself. Joshua, I'm Samantha first, and your girlfriend second. Of course I know. I just want to tell you that when you can't handle it, don't force yourself. I'm here for you. Good. 33. Before getting engaged to Joshua, I met Stephen at a friend's party one time. Of course, he also heard that Joshua and I were getting engaged. There were many people there, and he blessed me generously. I also smiled and thanked him. Someone took a photo of the two of us smiling face to face and posted it on WeChat Moments. The aesthetics of the Beijing prince and the ordinary Cinderella are so good. Joshua saw it from somewhere. I was extremely jealous. Samantha, did they think I was dead? What's aesthetics? Is it as delicious as secret love candy? He stayed up in the middle of the night and posted on his moments with his mobile phone. My secret love has come true. What a blessing in life. The accompanying picture is a photo of me when I was 18 years old, very young and immature. There is also Stephen in the photo. He is standing next to me, with a look of impatience on his handsome face. Joshua covered it with thick mosaics. In the upper left corner of the photo, there is a boy wearing a sports jersey with peach blossom eyes and a bright smile. It was the young Joshua. He specifically used a red circle to circle himself. After posting it on WeChat Moments, Joshua and I's phones went viral. I didn't care to look at him. I pulled him and asked, "You have a crush on me?" "Joshua, you have a crush on me secretly. When did it happen? You're so good at hiding it. If you hadn't gotten jealous and blown up tonight, I would never have known about it, right?" "Yeah, I have a crush on you." "No, it's not a secret love, it's an open love." Joshua touched his nose uncomfortably. "I confessed to you directly at that time." Joshua looked at me, his eyes full of doting helplessness. "But you ran away and have been avoiding me since then." I gradually remembered those things that happened so far away. When I first entered college, I was very inferior and timid. What's more, she was secretly thinking about Stephen and didn't pay any attention to other boys. I have completely forgotten these things. Later, your roommate told me that you hated me. Joshua snorted. The original words were, "He looked mean and evil when he laughed, and you can tell at a glance that he's not a good person. He must be trying to trick me." I felt so sad I can't describe the feeling. Maybe I was just saying that casually to my roommate at the time. But Joshua, he actually remembered it for all these years. "I'm sorry, Joshua." I tugged at his sleeve and apologized softly. "Just sorry." He raised an eyebrow at me. I laughed and rushed over, hugging his neck tightly. Then I will take responsibility for it for the rest of my life, okay? Joshua lowered his head and kissed me very gently. Then don't smile like that at other men anymore. I'll get jealous if I see you. Okay, I will only smile at you from now on. Samantha. I love you. I know. I turned my head back to his kiss. I love you too, Joshua. 34. In the second year of my marriage to Joshua, I gave birth to a beautiful daughter. In the same year, Stephen met with an accident abroad and injured his left arm, and was hospitalized for a long time. Later, he married the nurse who took care of him. The wedding was held after returning to the country. A friend secretly told me that the bride looked a bit like me in her eyes and eyebrows. Stephen's mother didn't like the girl very much, but she couldn't stop Stephen from insisting on marrying her. I just smiled and held my little daughter in my arms, teasing her lovingly. That night, when Joshua came home from get off work, he felt a little different than usual. We originally slept together with our daughter, but that night he asked the nanny to take his daughter to the nursery. We have been dating for 1 year and married for 2 years, and we have slept in the same bed countless times. But never like tonight. He was forceful and eager, and forced me to tell him I love you over and over again. Later I couldn't stand it anymore and pinched him hard. Joshua held me in his arms, and he looked even more aggrieved than I was. What's wrong with you? Samantha, you are mine. Of course it's yours. I hate it when other people covet you. Then I realized that this guy was probably jealous because Stephen married a woman who looked a bit like me. You covet it but never get it. Shouldn't you feel good about it? That won't work either. It's annoying to think of him as a dogskin plaster. This person has been married for 2 years and is becoming more and more childish. It's really laughable. I can only coax him patiently. The next day, Joshua suddenly suggested taking my daughter and I out to play. As expected, I ran into Stephen and his new wife. Stephen introduced his wife to us. I looked at the girl and she did look a bit like me in her eyes and eyebrows. Joshua hugged me and smiled at Stephen's wife. This is my wife, Samantha. She picked up her infant daughter and held her in front of Stephen's face. This is my and Samantha's daughter. Isn't she pretty? Doesn't she look exactly like Samantha? He was generous enough to let Stephen hold our daughter. Until finally, Stephen could no longer maintain the smile on his face, and he hurried away with his wife. Joshua was satisfied. Not long after that, Stephen took his wife to settle abroad. Evan's jealousy finally came to a halt. 35. Another 3 years passed and Stephen and his wife divorced. I heard that his wife took away a large sum of his money. One late night, I received a long-distance call in a daze. The person on the phone only said one sentence. Samantha, I'm sorry. When Stephen got divorced, a former good friend of mine asked me out for tea. He told me that before Stephen got married, he drank and talked all night. Stephen said. That year, when he found out that I had a secret crush on him, his first thought was that I was just trying to curry favor with someone so rich and powerful that I was only attracted by his money and background. So he humiliated me, made things difficult for me, and was generous to everyone else but only harsh to me. He just wanted to see if he could get no benefit from Stephen. Will I give up when I see difficulty and show my true colors? But no matter what he does or how he treats me, I will always be good to him and never leave him. That ring was indeed given to another girl back then. But the girl rejected him and said to him, Stephen, I can't accept that you have a girl like Samantha by your side. In fact, it's Samantha you like, not me at all. Stop deceiving yourself. He was furious at the time, a kind of rage and shame caused by someone exposing his true feelings. So he deliberately gave me the ring and asked me to be his girlfriend. He originally planned to tell me the truth and humiliate me in front of everyone after I accepted the ring. But I was laughing so happily and joyfully at that time that he softened his heart. That's how we started dating. He couldn't help liking me, but at the same time he couldn't accept the fact that he actually liked me. So he humiliated me and kept cheating on other girls. But when he gets drunk, he will hug me and beg for my forgiveness. Until the end, I asked him to borrow money for the first time. It was as if my initial guess had been verified to be true. My ugly true colors were finally revealed. I was with him only for his money. He hated it so much that he refused without hesitation, and he deliberately did that to humiliate and embarrass me. Maybe Steven couldn't even think of it at that time. Just because of a mere 50,000 yuan, he lost forever the silly girl who loved him wholeheartedly. When he realized the truth that I was short of money, the whole person was completely panicked and confused. Then one mistake after another goes further and further, until finally, there is no possibility of recovery. The friend brought up Steven's current situation again. I interrupted him with a smile. Sorry, I have to go home. My husband and daughter are here to pick me up. Outside the window, Joshua was getting out of the car holding his daughter. When he saw me, he smiled immediately. This guy, when he smiles, is so badass yet so lovable. The sun is shining and the spring is in full bloom. I waved to them, stood up and walked out. The frost and snow that fell on my body and heart when I was young. Finally, after meeting Joshua, it melted into soft spring water. From then on, there will be no more wind and snow in my long life, only sunny days.